What is going on, Hawks Nation? Welcome back to another edition of the HFTV podcast brought to you by Alex and Mac. Um, you know, it's been a rough few weeks, and honestly, it feels like it's been a rough couple of months, Mac. And it's kind of the night and day situation with the Hawks, where some games we look really good, i.e. the Clippers, and then a lot of the times we look really bad, like against the Lakers, and so on and so on. And last night was certainly no exception, right? At
Yeah, we
the
did, we
last,
did we did both in the same game. We looked good and we looked bad.
yeah, exactly. It's like we're like Jekyll and Hyde. Honestly, this team is the living embodiment of a tale of two teams, and it's unfortunate because we just can't seem to find that consistency on a at least on a 2 to 3 4 game stretch. One game we look decent, another game we look bad, and it's just and vice versa. It's just we just can't seem to find that consistency. And at the time of the last recording, there's been 3 games played, which was the Lakers game, Clippers game, and the Bucks game last night. And we went 1-2 in that 3 game stretch, unfortunately. Mac, what were your thoughts, my guy?
Man, I'm gonna keep it 100 on this. I'm not the happiest fan alive right now. Times have definitely been better in Hawks Nation. I do still believe that brighter days are ahead. I think those brighter days are going to come once we make a change. I won't even go into detail about that. I feel like we talk about it almost every episode. We all know what change needs to be made at this point, but we'll see what happens. But in terms of like the last 3 games, man, I just feel like it's such a representation of what the Hawks have been the last couple seasons. And that's, we'll lose these games. We got our asses handed to us by the Lakers in LA, and it was never really close at all. And then we play the Clippers, who are a very good basketball team. Like the Clippers, if they're fully healthy come postseason, they could definitely make some noise. So Clippers are a damn good team, and we beat them. It was a close game, sure, but I think closing out the first half and the second half of those games are what just really stood out to me so much. Such strong ends to the half, and obviously we end up winning that game. And then last night we played the Bucks, and those of you who watched, who I'm guessing is probably most of our listeners, we were getting destroyed, man, on national TV, ESPN, QB Brown calling the game, man. It was not good. It was pretty awful, man. I somehow kept it on. I kept watching, and we did make a comeback. And I won't deny it all. It was fun as hell. We even tied the game at one point. But I think you mentioned it
We
on
took the
the.
lead. We took the lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we did. You're right. 2 point lead in the fourth quarter. But you even mentioned it on last night's space. Like after that, I think we finished the game at that from like we took a 2 point lead, and then the Bucks went on like a 10-3 run or something like that. Like it just fell apart, and it was just one of those where, how hard the guys fought last night, as a fan, like, hey, if we're sitting at, 3 games above 500 instead of 3 games below 500, we lose that game, man. And it's honestly, it's a loss that you kind of take, you know what I mean? Like, hey, whatever, we didn't have Trae Young out there. We didn't have Clint Capela. We were down by 24 points at one point. We came back and even took the lead. Couldn't pull it off, but no big deal, right? That's not what the Hawks are in, though, man. Like that, these are games that we can't just keep losing them. They are piling up quick. We're already halfway through the season, man, and we're on pace to win 38 games at this point. And Alex, I mean, like I can pull it up. Me and you in the preseason when we like did our season, previews and projections and all that, bro. We did not have the Hawks winning 38 games. We had them being much better than that. So it's just frustrating, man. It feels like there's no end in sight unless a serious change is made. I guess that's what's the most frustrating for me right now is that it just doesn't seem like we're able to get any real consistency, any real traction. And if you look at our upcoming schedule, man, like there's like 2 winnable games, and well, I won't say winnable, but at least 2 games that we would probably be favored in for the rest of the month. Like it's heating up right now on our schedule, and we'll see what happens, man. But the optimism is always going to be there for me. I'm a Hawks fan. We haven't ever had much to be optimistic about, so that's what I'm saying, man. The optimism is always going to be there for me, but oof, man, it is dwindling quick this season. So, how are you feeling about it, man?
Yeah, it's much same like you, Mac. And I think we speak for a lot of Hawks fans in the current state that we're in is there's not a whole lot to be excited about. I mean, yeah, we have some solid pieces and we see flashes like DeAndre Hunter had a fantastic game against the Clippers, then kind of comes back against the Bucks and up until like the final like 10 minutes of the game, he was pretty quiet, but we have a lot of good pieces, right? Trey, JC, DeJounte, Dre, Clint, once he gets healthy, Bogey, AJ, the list goes on. But for whatever reason, we can't find, like you mentioned, that level of consistency. And I said this last night on Twitter. There's this, when it happens a few times, because the league, NBA, it's a tough league, right? It's the most competitive basketball league in the world. Best players in the world are playing in this. So, I'm not saying that I expect us to win every single game, right? We're not going to go 82-0 or anything of that nature, but I don't expect us to not get blown out certain games, right? Every team in the league gets blown out, every few nights, right? Or not every few nights, but it happens every once in a while, at least to the
Right,
good
right.
teams.
Hmm.
But with our team, it happens like the frequency of which these types of games happen, it happens almost every game or every other game. And that's the scary part, right? Some games will just get blown out. I think there's now probably double digit games now up until the season, more than 10 games where we've lost by more than 15 points in a game. And had it not been for that late kind of third and early fourth quarter surge, we would have gotten blown out by the Bucks too. But at one point, we were down by 20 plus points in that first half. And it's funny because I mean, for all the fans out there or the haters out there that say, "Oh, Trey's our problem. He's the issue." Because of him, we have terrible defense because he can't guard anything, or Trey's a ball hog and he takes stupid shots late in the fourth quarter, which is why we can never close out games, this and that. With or without Trey, last night was a perfect example. Our defense was still trash last night without Trey. Our offense, for the most part, was trash. And then, of course, we make that big little second half run. And then in crunch time, in the most important time of the game, once we take the lead late in the fourth quarter, we go back straight to ISO ball. Bogey taking some dumb shots, no ball movement, Dre taking some ill-advised shots. And it's just, there's no sense of teamwork, no sense of camaraderie. And it stinks, man. And, that I understand. I'm not naive enough to say that everything is all because of one particular person or one particular coach. But at some point, you kind of have to look at the top, right? And in this case, unfortunately, it's Nate McMillan that's the head coach. He is the one that's preparing the guys. He's the one that's prepping the game plan. He's the one that's telling the guys what to do, what the scheme is, what our offense is going to be, what our defense is going to be. Like, granted, a lot of our assistants have some say in that too, but ultimately it falls on the head coach, the CEO of the company. And it stinks. And because there is no scheme, there is no identity, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. That is why we see the season of how it's played out. It's because there's a reason why some nights, we get blown out. There's a reason why some nights we win games that we're not supposed to, like the Denver Nuggets game when we were missing 3 starters and we somehow beat, a top seeded Nuggets team. And then there's nights like where we lose to the Lakers and get blown out by the Pacers a few weeks ago. And last night's game against the Bucks was the perfect example of the Jekyll and Hyde, right? The inconsistencies, because one half where our starters were in, they look like complete trash. We get, down, 20 some ish points at some point in the first half. And then in the second half, we look like a completely different team. And most of the time it's the other way around. We've been used to seeing our team get big leads, 15, 16, 17, 18 point leads at some point in the game earlier in the season. And then in the second half, we just completely collapse. No ball movement. We do exactly the opposite of what we've done that entire first half to get us that big lead. And last night was the polar opposite. We got into a big hole, and then we ended up crawling and fighting back, much like the Clippers game, where we somehow won that. But last night in crunch time, we just go straight back to ISO ball. There's no ball movement, no calls or sets being, ran. And it's just like, what is this? And that is the lack of scheme and the lack of identity, the lack of preparation. And that's why it's always a coin flip. That's why some nights, like if I was working in Vegas right now, this Hawks team would be the hardest team to like predict a line to, because it's literally a coin flip. It does not resemble any identity of an elite team right now, current state, because it's just you don't know what you're gonna get. Like we obviously have some talented pieces that can win some games, and then a lot of the other nights we end up getting, taking L's, and it's unfortunate. And I never am the type of person that wants to call for another man's job. But Nate, the proof is in the pudding, right? If you perform poorly and you're not doing what you should be doing, ultimately someone has to take the fall. And unfortunately, it's Nate McMillan, and he's been a head coach for us for the past 2.5 seasons now. And, I think that ECF run was, a lot of that wasn't really credited to Nate because, quite frankly, and I've said this before, any coach that you plugged in after Lloyd Pierce got fired, I think because of just the new fresh voice, the new identity, and just not having Lloyd Pierce, mess up our locker room and everything, I think that's what really propelled us. But, these past 2 seasons, once Nate's has taken control and he's implemented his offense and his defense, we're living in a 2000s world mindset right now, right? Like it's 2023, the whole philosophy and ideology of trying to hunt mismatches and, settling for mid-range jumpers. It's not going to be successful in the modern day NBA, much like, Paul Johnson trying to run the triple option at Georgia Tech, being the only, Power 5 school still running that. It just doesn't work in today's day and age. And unfortunately, we're the victims of that. And, he failed at Indiana, he failed at Portland, and now it looks like he's gonna fail in Atlanta. So it's unfortunate, but that's where we're in. And I don't see this team changing, even regardless of what trades we do or don't make. As long as Nate McMillan is the head coach, I just don't see this team mustering up a whole lot of wins anytime soon.
Oh yeah. No, man, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll say this one last thing and then we'll move on to the Derrick Favors signing. But you nailed it on the head, man. Nate's the head coach. And when something like this happens, the pointing fingers and the blame game, it's not fun, but you got to be realistic to a degree, and someone has to take the blame for it. And like if your manager at your job or my manager at our job, our team was performing poorly and not hitting our numbers over and over and over again, yeah, man, they would be the one that would take the fall for it. So it's just how it works. If you don't want that kind of responsibility, don't be a head coach. It's as simple as that. Nobody's forcing Nate McMillan to do this. So I don't remember if I said it on last week's episode. I think I maybe have tweeted it. But last thing I'll say about it before we move on. At this point, I know it doesn't matter. It's not going to make them do anything, but ownership, you really are proving to the fan base right now that you don't seriously want to contend for a championship, because keeping Nate McMillan for whatever reason is clearly not the answer. I don't understand. There's so much hype. I mean, look at State Farm Arena, man. Like, even 10 years ago when we had Al Horford and Paul Millsap and all those guys and good basketball teams, it wasn't filled out and popping like it is today, man. Like the Hawks have more hype than they've ever had in their entire existence in this city, and ownership doesn't want to do anything about it. It's frustrating, man. I could go off forever about it, and that's why we are going to move on. But man, it's frustrating. But moving on to a little bit slightly positive news. I don't know how much of an impact on the court Derrick Favors will make for us. I hope he can make one. This is a guy that, sure, this was over 10 years ago, but he was the 3rd overall pick, and hasn't had a horrible NBA career. Like nobody, I don't think, has ever really labeled him as a bust. You know what I mean? So hopefully he can come in and do something solid for us. I'm not sure. I don't really know what the coaches or front office plan with him is at this point. Maybe he'll just get some plug-in minutes here and there. It is what it is. But nonetheless, pretty awesome for him and his family, I'm sure. Those of you that don't know, Derrick is actually from Atlanta, so he quite literally is coming home. So that's, as a professional athlete, I'm sure that's always a cool thing when you either get drafted by the team that is the city that you grew up in, or you're able to come back through free agency in some manner. So happy for Derrick Favors and his family, and hoping he can actually do something for us. But I'll say this: if Derrick Favors is getting significant minutes, that's probably not a good thing for us. But hey, it is what it is, and I'm happy to see him be an Atlanta Hawk.
Yeah, yeah. Derrick Favors, Atlanta legend, as you mentioned, grew up in Atlanta, went to South Atlanta High School. I actually saw him live a few times because we're relatively the same age. But yeah, Derrick Favors, you could definitely say his prime days are definitely well behind him. But who knows? Maybe he can do a little something, provide a little spark off the bench for us, playing in front of his hometown team. He's had a couple of great seasons in Utah where he was averaging, 16, 17 points for multiple seasons. So, obviously we don't need him to do that, but I think, random spot minutes here and there. We did sign him to a 10-day contract, so it's not like we're going to have a whole lot of a big sample size to really see what he can do for us. But I think this is just more of a bigger issue where front office and ownership is finding some potential insurance if the Clint Capela injury is still, lingering on. And right now, I'm going to be pessimistic, right? Because Clint, even though he's ramping up his workouts and we've seen in the videos, he's starting to run and do, actual live workouts and playing basketball. According to some interviews from earlier today and even yesterday, he's still not 100%. And apparently he still feels a little something in his calf, which isn't good because he's missed out. I want to say like the last, I don't even remember how many games. I want to say like the last almost like 8 to 10 games. That's a pretty big stretch. And especially last year when he was coming off that Achilles injury, it's just not good. And I think the bigger issue is this is the same injury that he suffered in Houston, but when we actually acquired him, if you all remember a few years back, Clint didn't play for us for the first few weeks from when we actually obtained him because of he was dealing with that calf injury he suffered in Houston, and it's that same injury once again popping up. So that's not a good thing, especially if it's a reoccurring injury, something that he's already suffered. And when you look at the wear and tear of NBA players, especially playing in the front court, that's not a good thing. So I have no reason to be optimistic, regardless of what the reports say and what videos we see. It's just not looking good. And that's why we signed Derrick Favors. And my best guess is this training staff and this team, they're not fully confident that Clint Capela is going to be 100% anytime soon, if he's ever going to be 100% for the remainder of the season. So, that's unfortunate because Clint, when he's on the court, he definitely changes the dynamic of this team, especially from a defensive side of things. And he is our rim protector. Like, for as great as JC has done, he's best and primed for a secondary rim protection and getting those weak side blocks. Clint is kind of the man in the middle, anchoring our defense. And, as much as we love OO, he's just not the type of center that Clint Capela is, unfortunately, at least not this year. And, we lose a lot of rebounding without Clint. We lose a lot of that rim protection without Clint. And he is our safety net. And given the roster construction, we don't have a whole lot of great perimeter defenders on this team. So once, opposing players beat our first line of defense, there's really not much help outside of Clint Capela. So, I commend JC for trying as best as he can, and Onyeka, but it's just not the same without Clint Capela. So it's unfortunate. He is listed as out again for tomorrow night's game against the Pacers. So again, that was a day before the injury report came out, which isn't a good thing. And hopefully he can come back on Monday for MLK. That's another primetime nationally televised game. But I wouldn't be surprised if he misses Monday night's game either. But that's kind of the status of Clint Capela. and it's sad. It's sad right now. It's just all things are not looking too positive for us right now, Mac.
Yeah, no, man. I think Clint has been a guy that I've always been pretty high on. I understand some Hawks fans have not been always super high on him, and that's their, opinion. Clint's always been a guy that I've felt was very important to our team and our team's success. And I'm not kidding, man. You said 8 or 10 games, so we'll just say he's been out for 10. Dude, there's 3 or 4 of those games that we win if Clint Capela is playing and playing at, a fully healthy high level, right? It just it's it is, man. Like you said, it's hard to be optimistic because I think it's being proven right now that, and I'm emphasis on right now, maybe not this time next year or later in the season or early. Right now, man, I think it's clear that Clint probably is our second best player or second most impactful player because, man, he's been gone, and I knew it was going to hurt us, but I feel like it's hurt us even more than I anticipated. And like you said, the news that is coming out that at least we as the general public are able to see that it doesn't look like he is making much progress on the injury. And look, man, I've never had a very serious calf injury, but I pulled my calf muscle about 2 years ago, and that mug hurt for months, man. So calf is just one of those muscles that you don't want to be messing around with. So it's it's a glaring hole in our team right now, especially our team defense, as you said, our rim protection. And I think Clint is honestly one of the guys in the league that's better at getting offensive boards. Dude would get 3 or 4 or 5 a game, and those are obviously second chance points. And some of these games, especially last night, were one where, sure, we ended up losing by about like 7 or 8 points, but it was very close at the end, right? Those second chance points matter. And it's just something that we don't have right now. It's an element that's completely missing. And like you said, John Collins is doing his best. Big O is doing his best, but there's a reason that Clint Capela puts up the stats that he does, has the resume that he does at this point in his career, and is as important as a player as he is, because he produces and can very much produce at a high level. So like there was an episode, and the last thing I'll say about it was probably like 6 or 7 episodes at this point, but he was going on such a tear. I called him Clint Chamberlain, man. He was tearing it up, man. He was putting up 25 and 20, like he did it like 2 or 3 games in a row. And that lets you know, sure, that's not the biggest sample size ever, but the dude can do it, man. He can produce at a high level, and I'm hoping we get him back soon. Like you said, I know we won't have him for tomorrow's game against Indiana, but Monday is going to be a big opportunity for us to maybe try and turn this shit. But crap, man, we've been saying that for a while, so I don't know if that will happen. But before we go into our last topic, we will pay some bills around here. The Firminent shout out will be a little different this time, so hope you guys enjoy what Firminent had to provide for us.
When you need quick, effective, and accurate data cabling services, call Firmament Solutions. We care about your network infrastructure. Our services are white-labeled, so you get the contracts. We provide the services. Our expertise includes low-voltage communication, networking, electrical, physical security, and life safety equipment. We're industry leaders, providing 24-hour service coverage. So we ask, when is the best time to have one of our certified technicians assist you?
All right, guys, so we'll move into our next topic here. We'll wrap it up on this. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this before or ever seen these before, but there are some John Collins trade rumors. I know as Hawks fans, but that's very new to us. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic as I'll get out because this guy seems like he's in a trade rumor every other day. The most recent one, though, was for the Utah Jazz, and it would be, I believe it was for a 2-player swap. It was Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. And I'll be honest, man, I don't know too much about either player. I'm a little bit of a homer in that sense. I got to be better about it, but there are certain players on their teams that I don't know too well. But I got to say this, Jared Vanderbilt is on my fantasy team. Dude kills it. So averages like 20 fantasy points a game, which is pretty darn good. So, I guess it wouldn't be the worst return ever. Because I've definitely seen some John Collins trade rumors where I'm like, yeah, no, that is awful. But yeah, man. It's also, I guess, before I throw it back to you, I did see too that the Hawks. This was, rumored, so I don't know if this is true, obviously, but it was rumored that we were asking for Donovan Mitchell asking prices and the trade packages for John Collins. So, which I think is somewhat deserved. Sure, I will admit Donovan Mitchell is a better player than John. John Collins can make a huge impact on a great team, especially with great coaching. So, so yeah. So, what are your thoughts on these JC trade rumors yet again?
Yeah, another week, another JC trade rumor. Yeah, the latest one, of course, being per Jake Fisher, the Bleacher Report, who, if you guys aren't familiar with Jake Fisher, he was the first one to call out the DeJounte Murray trade in the offseason. So he's somewhat plugged in. He is wrong a lot of the times, but, every once in a while he does have the inside scoop. So take this with a grain of salt, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, per Jake Fisher, the Utah Jazz and the Atlanta Hawks have been in discussions around a potential trade with Jared Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley for JC. And also, after doing some digging, it looks like Utah is also possibly looking for a first-round pick attached to that as well. Personally, I wouldn't do that trade, especially if there's a first-round pick that we would have to include. But let's be quite clear. In a vacuum, out of the three players, JC is definitely the superior player out of those three. But with that said, Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt definitely bring a unique skill set to this team. Of course, I've seen Jared Vanderbilt for a few years now, especially when he was with Minnesota, but the dude's a defensive stud. What can definitely add a lot of defensive versatility to us. He's not nearly the same type of rim protector or shot blocking player that JC can provide for us. But as far as your straight POA and versatility and perimeter defense, Jared Vanderbilt, that's kind of his calling card, his specialty. Averages a little over 8 assists or 8 rebounds per game. So and he also has some playmaking ability as well. So that's Jared Vanderbilt in a nutshell. Malik Beasley, same thing. Saw him a bunch in Minnesota days. And the dude can definitely get hot at any given moment. He's a great shooter. I think he's shooting like 36 to 37% from three this year, but Malik Beasley, definitely could be a spark off the bench with him and Bogey and AJ Griffin. So, and that just adds another wing to our rotation. So if this is something serious that our front office is potentially thinking about, it's not the worst trade. If there's no first round pick attached to it, I don't know how much better of an offer we can get. The main kind of target I would be wondering if we could pry him away from Utah if they're going to make a trade with us would be, of course, Lauri Markkanen, who's just having an incredible season, can stretch the floor out, play down low, and also get some boards for us too. So it would be interesting to see, but yeah, that is the latest trade rumor involving John Collins. And I've said this on a few other episodes, but regardless of who we do or don't trade, it's not going to matter, right? For as long as, Nate McMillan is still kind of leading the charge and, leading this team, I don't care who we get. I just don't see any moves that are going to make us better unless that first move is made first. So we'll see what happens. But again, we're just relaying the information and the news that we've seen back to you all. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but something to keep an eye out for as we are approaching trade deadline next month. And yeah, just anticipate a lot more of these trade rumors start heating up now as we're a few weeks away from that deadline. But all in all, do I think we end up trading JC? I think there's a pretty good chance. At this point, I think it's like a 50-50 chance that we actually do trade him. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's pretty much going to be it for today's episode, unless anything else you want to add that I missed, Mac.
No, I was just going to say, and one on this, the Hawks are one of those teams that with its current state, you may see other names besides John Collins circulating in trade rumors because, it may turn into a little bit of a fire sale. I don't know. I hope not. I want to keep all of our guys if we can, but, we'll see what happens, guys. It has not been the easiest couple months for us Hawks fans, but there's one thing that we can guarantee, and that's that HawksFanTV is going to keep bringing you guys that content. We're going to keep bringing you guys spaces, articles, podcasts, other things coming up as well, more giveaways as well. We're about to hit 13,000 followers. I'm going to convince Alex to do a bogey jersey giveaway for the 13,000. So be looking out for that, guys. Things may not be good with the Hawks right now. Things are great over HawksFanTV though, guys. So keep following, keep listening, keep watching, and we'll keep pumping it out. So thank you guys as always for listening and watching and following. And I say this with as much optimism as I can. Go Hawks, baby.
Go Hawks.